Could the Buffalo Bills still sign Asante Samuel Jr.? Well, folks, I have to tell you what, I had the opportunity of checking the current cap situation for the Buffalo Bills prior to coming on stream. And where it stands currently, the Bills are at, let me go ahead and pull this up so we have solid representation. As you can see, we have about $7 million that is currently ranked at 29th ranked in the league. Now, I do understand that some of the contracts still have yet to be added into Spot Track, but this is probably a pretty solid estimation. And you look at a couple of factors that are going into this. Number one, each and every single NFL team that goes into the new league year typically has to set aside around $5 million for the upcoming draft class. That is for the salaries of the first rounders, second rounders. And then once you end up getting into the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round, it's nothing but rookie minimum contracts. But keep in mind, $5 million is what the Buffalo Bills need to set aside for this upcoming class by itself. Now, I know a lot of us have been scratching our heads saying, hey, why has Asante Samuel Jr. not been signed? And I think it kind of doubles down into, I think a lot of front offices are concerned about his recent placement on the IR last year. And excuse me. Excuse me there. And perhaps I think there's a couple of teams that might be in a bidding war for the corner. He has a lot of upside. He really does. Prior to injury, he was an up-and-coming corner that I think would be able to fit into the Buffalo Bills scheme almost immediately, right? Like be an impact player, an automatic upgrade from what we saw in the Rasul Douglas days. However, with that being said, we're sitting here and looking at in Buffalo Bills cap table, $7 million is what we have. Let's just go on ahead and in our minds set aside $5 million for what we need to pay this upcoming draft class and still be cap compliant, by the way. And then let's compare that to what Spot Track believes that Asante Samuel Jr. is owed for this upcoming season. Now, this is not etched in stone, as we have said before. Lesson number 2 that I hope the vast majority of you, or 90% of you at least, who watch me on a regular basis, have learned and implemented into your football mindset, that the average annual salary data point is not something to look at. Don't compare that to the $7 million that we have. We need to discuss what his cap number would be in 2025. Now, Spot Track is saying that he is worth, and granted, this is only up to what Spot Track believes that he is, $11.5 million average annual salary, a 4-year deal at about $45 million. A deal that I would like would be right around half of that figure guaranteed, right? So that way, if it was a 4-year contract, we had a base salary of about $2 or $3 million, I'd say give or take. And then you end up splitting that bonus in all 4 years of said contract. I think the Buffalo Bills could ultimately end up getting it done based off of the number that we are looking at right now. But the pessimist in me is really starting to feel that we are done with free agency. I would love to be wrong. Listen, I promise you, I will be the first Bills creator on the internet to rush to my computer and do a breaking news stream that we were somehow able to bring this corner into the defense, because I think it is that imperative. Imagine going into the draft, locked and loaded, all positions of need are addressed, where we put ourselves in the position to take the best player available in any given round with the 10-plus picks that are awaiting us in Green Bay, Wisconsin for the NFL draft. I feel like all of us would be on board with this. But I can't shake this. Now, there's a possibility we could get more, right? Like there still are potential restructures that could happen. If, for example, we decided to give a restructure to Deion Dawkins, for example. He has a cap hit of about $19 million this year. Some of that money could be moved around. Matt Milano potentially could be restructured. Ed Oliver, who already was, I want to say. A lot of different options of what we can do to start squeezing a bit of extra cash in order to make a deal like this done. But $7 million is what we are looking at. Now, a podcast and an X account ended up dropping something that I found pretty interesting. And I do want to give them a shout out. This is a podcast about the Buffalo Bills called Bills Cast. Certainly go check them out. They are thinking of a cheaper option of an Asante Samuel Jr. since there really hasn't been a lot of movement on the specific prospect itself. They have mentioned a Dalvin Tomlinson and a Benjamin St. Justy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I am not going to go out here and pretend that I am familiar with either of those names. But luckily, I think that we can all research ourselves and see what this dude is all about. We have Benjamin St. Justy. What do we have here? Look at that. Benjamin St. Just. Oh, my God. 27 years old, out of California. College, Minnesota by itself. And let me double check. This right over here, he's a corner. Market value, as you can see, a 2025 cap hit right over there. I'm not sure if he was re-signed perhaps recently, why Spot Track is suggesting this. Let's go ahead and check out Dalvin Tomlinson as well to see if that's a potential option. Or say, for example, he's not there. What's Dalvin Tomlinson all about? You have this guy right over here, Arizona Cardinals. He's a defensive tackle to be added as well. If they were intrigued on that, sounds like that they already have ended up getting a new contract in line with this guy as well, perhaps, if they wanted to move along. But really, at the end of the day, folks, if we want an Asante Samuel Jr., I think we're going to need a bit larger of a number here. And I think one of the only ways that we could ultimately end up getting that done is if, of course, we end up restructuring Deion Dawkins or a couple of other players to squeeze a little bit more money out, because $7 million, $5 million associated with the draft capital, the upcoming draft class, it's not looking good. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because when it comes into me grading the Buffalo Bills free agency period so far, I'm not sure if you were able to catch Fourth and Forever over on the Roundtable Sports Network, but we ended up having a slight little segment where we were grading all of the teams in the AFC East, and I elected to give the Buffalo Bills a B+. I thought that they did a wonderful job in addressing key holes that needed to be addressed, with something a little bit left to be desired, and that obviously is a CB2. So whether or not that's something that we really doubled down on, dare I say, double dip in the NFL draft, that is great. But the pessimist inside of me is already accepting the fact that Asante Samuel Jr. Likely will not be an ad. But again, I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. Now, let's go over to the chat. For those of you that are watching the replay of this video, this is currently the time where I go over to my live chat community and allow them to control the conversation. If, for example, that you are watching the replay, I highly recommend when you subscribe to the channel, you turn on bell notifications so you know exactly when and where I am going live. I do need to give a giant shout out to today's sponsor, and that just so happens to be William Mattar. Folks, if you were ever hurt in a car, you got to call William Mattar. Like, no questions asked, right? I don't wish a car accident on absolutely anybody. However, if you find yourself in that circumstance, it is imperative that you find the appropriate representation and look no further than my guy, William Mattar. Phone number is on the screen. Best possible personal injury / car accident attorney in the game. Make sure that he is top of mind if that unfortunate scenario tends to happen to you. All right, without further ado, let's get into the chat. Bobby Hall out of Facebook, by the way, is coming in. And he is saying, I thought we have done a hell of a job so far. I feel like you and I are on the same page. I really do. I think that we have bolstered up our defensive line. I think that we've certainly had a couple of risks here and there, right? Like, you are going to want to make sure and hope at least that Joey Bosa can give us a slightly improved production than what Von Miller has been giving us for the past couple of years. And you also need to hope that he could stay healthy. Have to hope that our defensive tackle from Pittsburgh that was just acquired, he can actually recreate his season over in Cincinnati in 2021, because that was truly, I would say, his staple performance, where he ultimately ended up having 7 sacks, was a unit over in that interior defensive line in Cincinnati by itself. Same thing with Michael Hoyt. He's young. He has been showing signs of progression in his career. Can he take that next step? Obviously, the new safety from the Commanders, which we've had a conversation about already, looked very good under the Ron Rivera system. phased out of it when Dan Quinn took over. So the sky is the limit, ladies and gentlemen, with these current free agency signings, including Joshua Palmer. I cannot believe that I didn't have time to give him his flowers, because damn, did that guy show up and show out. Do we bring back Rasul Douglas? I don't believe so. I probably wouldn't be the biggest fan of that. While he did play very well for us 2 years ago, I think it was pretty clear that he had his share of regression. And ideally, I would like to walk away from that and get a bit younger at the position, right? And here's another thing when it comes into Asante Samuel Jr. Like, we have arguably one of the most slept on corners in the league on this roster already in Christian Benford. And the guy himself probably deserves close to like top corner money. Like, not top one, but like top 5, like average annual salary, or a deal that's somewhat similar to what like Chavarius Ward ended up getting. I think that that's not completely out of the equation at this point. And I feel like us turning around and paying a corner significant bucks and then looking at Christian Benford and saying, hey, brother, sorry, you're going to have to wait until next offseason. And then we're going to be finding ourselves in a bidding war so we could potentially get him there, having to outbid any other pending teams that would be interested in finding a corner. Hence why he was my number one priority in extending this offseason. But obviously, this Buffalo Bills team had different priorities. I don't blame them. I understand where they were coming from a financial decision side, but is what it is. We still need to get either Derek Harmon and or Walter Nolan. I mean, look, yes, we addressed edge and defensive tackle in free agency, but both of them are only on 1-year deals. So they are not going to be long-term answers for the Bills. I would agree with you that we still need to probably prioritize those positions. I'm still open into double dipping at the defensive tackle position for this upcoming draft because we need to find a long-term answer. Also include Kenneth Grant in that specific mock draft. I feel like we'd be good about that. I have a feeling about Bosa. He needs a good season just as much as us. I mean, look, we just heard his press conference. His energy appears to be there, but it's all going to be centralized around, can he give us his 4th fully healthy season of his career? That is left to be decided. But I would be thrilled if he can put out and just do slightly better than the production from Von Miller. Hey, Dan, really kind of bummed that we didn't get Chavarius Ward, but to be honest, that dude got overpaid. I never really thought that Chavarius Ward was an option for the Buffalo Bills because, again, I do think that when you have a corner on your team like Christian Benford and you are considering extending him, right? I feel like you don't want to pay or have 2 corners getting paid CB1 money on the same cap table. I think it's redundant. I don't necessarily think that it's useful. So I never really had Chavarius Ward as a top option for me because we already have that position filled. Like, what we need is a CB2. And I think a player like Asante Samuel Jr. fits that mold. It's not quite the exact same amount of money that we would be giving to Christian Benford or the likes of what Chavarius Ward or DJ Reed would have made, for example. So it's intriguing. Jeff from Facebook is coming in saying, also, what will we do at punter? I wouldn't be surprised if we bring in some sort of older free agent. I also wouldn't be surprised if we bring in an undrafted free agent, a younger guy. I'm sure we'll have it locked in. I don't see it as a big priority for the front office because, quite frankly, folks, like, we're talking about an offense right now that was number 1 in the league for points per game when you include playoffs. So this Buffalo Bills team didn't necessarily have to punt the ball too often for the past couple of years, which is a good thing. It is a very, very good thing. But I don't really see it being a position of need that should worry us. I'd love if we could sign him. We'd probably actually address wide receiver where we should then. Dave Rock, I pray Joey Bosa balls out and stays healthy. I think Bean said, damn, I got the Bosa brothers mixed up. The lead. I think we should get a second round pass rusher still and a first round corner. So the thing is that I want to address both of those positions, but I don't want to walk into the first round saying that it has to be a defensive tackle or it has to be a cornerback, right? Like earlier today, and I highly recommend once I'm done with this stream, folks, if you are starving for more Dan Mitchell time and or NFL content, I did a mock draft stream earlier where I did two different examples where I stayed put at 30. And then on the second example, I ended up trading down in the second overall pick. And one of the best examples I saw was during our second mock drafts. We got to pick 30, and all of the defensive tackles that I typically would have been excited about getting in the first round were gone. So what I did was that I ended up looking at, all right, who's available at the cornerback position, who is available at the wide receiver position that I would feel okay spending a first round pick on. I didn't see anybody, so I traded down. And that's the exact same mentality that I would like to have from our front office. Sarah Christine, or knowing McDermott, he'd probably just go all D in the top 3 anyway and address wide receiver once we get down to our 4s. And there's really not a lot, like there's not bad options in the 3rd and or the 4th round. There's really not, right? Like obviously, I think everyone knows, and almost to an annoying level, how much of an advocate I have been for Jalen Royals. And people would be like, oh my God, Dan, Jalen Royals. Just reflect last year when I was pounding the damn table for Ladd McConkey. And a lot of you guys just didn't understand. You're like, no, Dan, it's A.D. Mitchell. What are you talking about? I was like, no, I promise you, Ladd McConkey is going to be one of the best wide receivers to come out of this draft class last year. I said that he would have a better season than Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. So I have that same gut feeling, folks. I really, really do. I think Royals is going to be the steal of this draft. I'm confident in Bean drafting corners. Take Kyer out of the conversation, and they've done phenomenal at drafting them. Really, anybody in the secondary typically works outside of the control group of Kyer Elam. We can't make the same mistake we did with Elam if we're looking for an answer in the drafts. If we can sign Bosa, we might as well sign a CB version of Bosa in Jair Alexander. I mean, listen, I feel like that would be a double risk because we signed an injury-prone edge rusher, and we would have to bring in an injury-prone cornerback in Jair Alexander, who has not played very often in the past 3 seasons. I think it was like 20-something games or maybe even in the high teens for the past 3 seasons. He's been dealing with injuries quite a bit. I think one injury risk in free agency is enough. I never understood why Matt Ariza, the punk god, ended up at Kansas City. He's there, man. He is there. Dan, John, how you doing, man? How you doing, bro? Gotcha, Richard. It is a scheme specific, like man versus zone. I feel like we're having a separate conversation in here. Perfect second drafts. For now, I believe the Bills are going to package picks to get a starting corner in the draft and trade up. Okay, we have a trade up situation. I do think that, say that I would put money on any specific transaction Brandon Beane would make, I would put my mortgage on the fact that we will end up in the 3rd round, that we will end up with a 3rd round pick. That's how confident I am. Now, whether or not that is us trading down from the 1st round or whether or not that is us packaging what seems to be our endless 5th round selections to get there, who knows? But yeah. I mean, listen, dude, I am not going to count anything out. Nick, do you think the Bills should trade up if they feel that a good defensive player is still available? Has to be somebody that is upper echelon and has fallen significantly, right? Has to be somebody that was at first projected to go in the top 10 or top 15 and has fallen down to like 2021 or 22, for example. then I would be okay with that. Dan, Buffalo Bills are in the driver's seat. Everyone on ESPN has a hem winning it all this year. And they even said that they are better than Kansas City Chiefs, who will not even make the Super Bowl. Wow, man. Listen, you know what? I've bought into a lot of offseason hype for quite some time. And quite frankly, it's ripped my heart out. It has ripped my heart out, ladies and gentlemen. So I am going to remain cautiously optimistic and hope for the best. Drea, we should use our first on a defensive tackle, then trade both second-round picks for a higher second-round pick and a third-round pick. Then we get a decent corner or safety and Royals in the third. A lot of different strategies. All I know is that I think that we positioned ourselves nicely going into Green Bay. What's up, Dan? Go Bills. Cameron? Not a lot, my friend. I'm hanging out. As many of you know, I am now a coach of a travel baseball team for my nephew, and I am about to head on over to practice here in about 20, 25 minutes and get those kids in shape. All right. We have a damn tournament coming up, and I want to make sure that they are stone cold killers out there. You know, hey, is what it is. It's fun. I'm glad that I'm getting out there, as the kids say, to touch grass. Look at that. Jason N is saying, well, we do currently have 10 draft picks this year and 9 picks for 2026. Look, we have a lot of capital. When you look at the Bills roster, we need 2 more receivers, a tight end, 3, a defensive tackle, and 2 corners. Could we trade 4 to 5 picks in the draft because we won't be able to roster 10 draft picks this year? I think a trade up, in my opinion, is more likely to slightly move up in some of the later rounds. Again, like I said, I think that there's no way that Brandon Beane is not making a selection in the third. So as far as trading up, I just have a gut feeling it's more than likely going to happen in the later rounds. The trade up slightly within that same one or that coveted third round selection. But yes, I don't think that we are going to be trading up in the first. I'd be happy if I was wrong. Of course, depending on what prospect we walked away with, but that's a conversation for another time. We can trade our second round pick with our first to get up to pick 18. Man, I think they will draft a defensive tackle with the first and move up for a DB. They maybe package picks to get up there early in the second round. I mean, it really depends on what players the Buffalo Bills like, right? We have a super chat that just came in. MJ Blonde, thank you so much. I know we have made some acquisitions to help bolster the defensive line, but my gut is telling me that we need to move up and grab Kenneth Grant. It's wild with Kenneth Grant because a month or so ago, I was seeing Kenneth Grant fall to the 14th, 15th, overall pick in most mock drafts. And that's coming from very credible sources. But now you fast forward to today, and there are so many analysts thinking that he is going to potentially be available at the 30th overall pick. I've seen a couple of analysts have him drop all the way to the early second round. I'm a massive Kenneth Grant guy. If Kenneth Grant is there at 30, 110%. I am taking that guy. No ifs, ands, or buts. Maybe if Derek Harmon is there, I'd take Derek Harmon over Kenneth Grant, but there are very few players on my board that I would take over that prospect. He's that much of a day one contributor and a massive future investment for this D-line. I appreciate you going live twice a day. It gives me something to listen to while I'm at work. Bobby, hey, man, listen, I appreciate that. And let me tell you what, guys, right? Several times I talked to a lot of you guys, and a lot of the audience members say that they sort of utilize me as an escape from work while they are going through their day-to-day activities. Feel free to use me as a radio station or a talk show, a podcast, what have you. I come on here twice a day, Monday through Friday, just to talk ball, sometimes during the weekends as well. So I appreciate all of you. We have grown our community pretty significantly, I would say, throughout this past year or so. 250 of you are currently vibing with me. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. Smash that like button if you're down, if you're into it, baby. Richard Forbes, I get it, but that prospect has been from 1 to 30. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say. I think now now we're going to start getting a bit more of a factual and or a more believable draft board in these mock drafts that are released. Because prior to free agency, I really don't even like looking at the Daniel Jeremiah 2.0 mock drafts prior to the free agency period, because we don't know what teams are trying to fill holes with or what strategy they're going with. Like for months prior to free agency, I think everybody was on board with, oh man, you know that Cam Ward's going number one. You know that the Giants are going to be selecting Shedeur Sanders. You had all three of the quarterback prospects, or two rather, going within the first three picks. But now we're seeing rumors that Kirk Cousins might go to Cleveland. We saw that Russell Wilson just visited the Cleveland Browns. So for all we know, like now, all of these quarterback prospects are going to fall a couple of spots. And dare I say, maybe even into the second round. We don't know. And that's the same for every single other position group. And that's why I think that it also makes sense why Kenneth Grant, for example, has been falling in a lot of boards. But like, really, we don't know. The draft is a crapshoot. It all depends on what that specific front office is thinking. Some front offices are smarter than others, obviously. I like to look at each and every single individual team as a separate corporation that operates off of an entirely different ethos that has a different strategy and a different philosophy on how to build a roster. So I don't know. Like, no one expected Michael Penix to go 8 overall to the Atlanta Falcons last year, right? Especially when we saw Kirk Cousins like sign a massive deal with them just weeks before. So it's I don't know, man. Jordan Smith, don't expect the Bills to draft anyone on the offensive line unless it is like round 6 and or 7. We will have all 9 guys back from last year back this season. Yeah, I think 5th round could potentially be an option for us too, because do keep in mind we have David Edwards, our starting left guard, as a pending free agent next year. And Connor McGovern is also technically a pending free agent next year in 2026. So I do think that like we may like take a flyer out on some interior guys, just the plan for the future, right? And if not, and say that we can't retain both of them next year in the offseason, then we'd probably end up going to the draft a bit earlier. Dan, draft picks are nice, but when you want to make a Super Bowl run, we need NFL experience. Yes and no, right? Because I feel like we need to look at the past couple of Super Bowl champions. Like, let's look at the Philadelphia Eagles that just ended up, like, obviously dethroning the Kansas City Chiefs. And you have to think about all of the players that were the big impacts, right? Like, why did the Philadelphia Eagles have such a damn good game, right? Have to look at their pass rush. Obviously, led with Jalen Carter. He is a great damn player for that team. Had Cooper DeJean, who had a hell of a damn game. Same thing with Quinyon Mitchell. Like, a lot of your impact players have to be developed through the draft. And the Kansas City Chiefs have been doing that exact same thing for quite some time as well. Like, a lot of their success has been with players that they indeed drafted. It's a hell of a lot easier. So, of course, like when you have a Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback, that certainly helps out. But past couple of Super Bowl champions, I'd probably have to give a hell of a lot more credit to the impact players that were drafted and groomed from the time that they were drafted. But if that's the philosophy, Ward, I think that the Buffalo Bills did a pretty good job in free agency. Kenneth Grant, Richard Forbes, look at that. Noob is coming in saying, I think we bring in a corner in free agency. It will be a corner that was already on the roster. Don't tell me Dane Jackson. Don't tell me Dane Jackson, man. All right. We saw the Vikings ended up trading an offensive lineman to the Houston Texans. That is latest breaking news. Center Garrett Bradbury, if they can't. Okay. Interesting. Dexy Gaming. Thank you so much, man. Dan, these are the guards I like for the Bills. Luke Kandra, Cincinnati. Dylan Fairchild, Georgia. Willie Lampkin, North Carolina. And Connor Colby out of Iowa. I mean, look, yeah, dude, most definitely. I grabbed a kid out of Jacksonville State University. It was earlier in my mock draft. His name is escaping me right now. but he was intriguing. And then also a guy that we found in the 7th round that has quite a bit of experience at center and also left guard and right guard. But I don't see us like wasting a pick in like the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd on an offensive guard. It's just a sneaky need for this team that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about. Levi, can't pay them all. Got to keep that draft line going. Dan, are we getting Asante Samuel Jr. for the Chargers? I sincerely hope so. But the realistic part of me is assuming we are done. And like I said, I would be thrilled, right? I would be the first person you see on the internet live talking about it if that breaking news crossed our screen. But again, as I began this episode, this is how I look at it. This Buffalo Bills team currently has about $7 million in cap spend available right now. And always know and always keep in mind to subtract $5 million from this because we need to associate $5 million for the draft class that is coming in. So realistically, we have about $2 million. We could restructure Deion Dawkins maybe to get us at around 8 or 9. And then we would also have to account for what a potential contract for Asante Samuel would look like. And according to Spot Track, that is $11.5 million. Now, that's AAV. Again, y'all know I got significant beef with AAV. We would just need to make sure that it made sense, that his base salary would be at around $2 to $3 million. And we would be able to guarantee about half of the figure that Spot Track is trying to estimate that he is worth. That's my thought, at least. Love Bills free agency ads. And the Dolphins wanted Bosa. I'm glad the Bills got Joey Bosa. We got to be planning on signing some veteran CB. There is no way in hell we're planning to draft and develop 3 corners. It might not be Asante Samuel Jr. It might be somebody that's a bit more, I'd say, affordable. And that was the nicest term that I could have came up with, right? But have Christian Benford. He's still doing extension. I'm curious to see if that happens now. Have Taron Johnson. Have Cam Lewis, but he would be an absolute liability out there if, for example. But yeah, most definitely. I trust this coaching staff into developing like secondary. And also don't sleep on Jamarcus Ingram as well, right? Do not sleep on Jamarcus Ingram. I have a feeling that he will take a massive step forward as quality depth, at least. This draft is loaded with defensive tackles and running backs. Absolutely. Draft Maxwell Hairston instead of signing Asante Samuel Jr. I am a big Maxwell Hairston guy. Absolutely massive. I am also a Darian Porter guy out of Iowa State. Both of those corners would be a match made in heaven for this defense. Big Papa Bill. We will end up getting Landon Jackson. All top-grade defensive tackles and corners will be gone by the 30th round. I love Tua. I'm glad we didn't get Bosa. Okay. If all of your favorite defensive tackles are gone at pick 30, would you draft Matthew Golden or trade back and possibly get a 3rd-round pick? If Matthew Golden was still there, I would take Matthew Golden. I don't believe Matthew Golden's going to be there, though. Right? He had a hell of a combine. And I think he did himself significant favors with that performance. But, so to answer your question, Khalil, if Kenneth Grant and Derek Harmon are gone and Matthew Golden was still available, yes, you're damn right I would take Matthew Golden. Kenneth Grant or the Ole Miss guy? I think you're talking about Walter Nolan. I'd probably go Kenneth Grant because Walter Nolan's more of like a 3-tech, a larger 3-tech than Ed Oliver. Like a true 1 technique. Like you're looking at the Derek Harmons of the world. You are looking at the Kenneth Grants of the world, the Tyleek Williams, and the Darius Alexanders as well. So I like Walter Nolan, but I don't think that he would be as good of a fit as those other 4 I just mentioned. Opposed to Xavier Watts? Would not be. And I think safety still needs to be addressed in the draft because we have 3 guys currently that's contracts are expiring next offseason. Like we only have 1 safety that we have for the foreseeable future. And that, of course, is Cole Bishop. All three of our guys, contracts expire next offseason. Watts would be cool. I would love Emin as well. I don't think Malachi Starks is going to drop, but Tua is going to be getting smacked by the two Italian Matt Milano and Joey Bosa, the villain. Hey, Dan, and do you think that we are going to pay the chef the money he deserves? Be blessed. Go Bills. Man, it's tough, dude. I sort of knew / sort of predicted that like we would have to make some difficult decisions, and I didn't believe that we were going to be able to walk away with contract extensions for all of the players that were technically due one. I knew that there were going to be at least 2 players that would not get an extension. I think we're done extending players right now. I think we're done extending players. Again, I would be happy to be wrong, but I'll tell you what, as big of a fan as I am of James Cook, I have Christian Benford as a much higher priority on my list for a new contract. A much higher priority. Malachi is coming to Miami, and he is going to pick off Josh Allen. Likely in garbage time when we are up by 21 points. Get them quarterbacks like they owe money to the mob. Hey, Dan, how did we get a 5th and a 7th for Elam? I feel like we need to get as many Ivy League professors to conduct a case study on how that happened. Some of the most gifted intellectual, psychological minds out there to determine how the hell we were able to pull that off. I'm not sure. I think we have to get rid of Daquan and Phillips. What do you think? Daquan is on his final year of the contract. He'll still be on this team. Benford, not a must done, a concussion, an issue. He's only had what, like 2? He's good. Hey, Dan, your show is the best for Bills news. I'm so happy that you have done well. Let's go, Bills. If we do draft, it's going to be Trey Amos from Ole Miss, and the other corners have character issues and or injury. I like Trey Amos. I wish that I were to see him fully participate at the Senior Bowl, but he ended up getting hurt, and he had to cut his exercise short. Where do you think Trey Hendrickson is going? I mean, it really depends if Cincinnati decides to actually ask for something reasonable. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like they're asking for what an anonymous GM stated as a ridiculous compensation. I think he's going to end up on one of 3 teams. One is the Washington Commanders. 2 is the Chicago Bears. And 3 is the New England Patriots. I think it's going to be one of those 3 teams because all 3 of them have the money and all 3 of them have the need. So, and plus, it's more likely the Commanders and or the Bears because I think Cincinnati's trying to avoid sending them off to an AFC, a conference situation, but that's my take. Jerry Jones is the biggest team player for other teams. Let's see. What do you think it would happen with Cook? What do you think it would happen with Cook, or what would need to happen in order for Cook? He'd probably just need to take a pay cut a bit more, like honestly. But all right, boys, like I said, I am about to run to baseball practice because like I said, I am a coach to a travel baseball league, all right, for my nephew's team. And I got to make sure these dudes are in shape for their tournament on Saturday. All right, so do me a favor, smash that like button. And when you subscribe, make sure you turn on bell notifications because as you know, I do go live sporadically. I want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to ask me questions live on air. Also, do me a favor as well. If you know any other Bills fans or NFL fans and you get into a conversation about football, let them know about the show, right? Let them know about the show. I want to continue to grow this brand, this live chat community as much as humanly possible. So I appreciate all the love and all the support. It's always a pleasure talking ball with my boys online, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Deuces.